Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It's Jo here. I hope you're all well. If you're new here, I'm Jo. I do craft videos as well as Poundland hauls and my charity shop finds. So for today's project, I finished my garden walls for my miniature diorama that I'm doing, and I actually thought this would only take about a week to do. I don't know why I thought it would take a week, but it ended up taking 4, and I'm so glad that they're done and I get to share it with you today. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm using 4 of the canvas boards, and these are from Poundland. They are 25 centimeters by 30 centimeters, and I'm going to glue these together using my hot glue gun, and these are going to be the base for my garden. So I'm just going to glue them together so I can measure the size that I need my walls to be, and I'll be back. So I've glued them together using the glue gun, and now I'm just going to add a little bit of tape underneath to make them a little bit stronger. I will be adding card underneath this as well at some point, but for now, just going to add a little bit of tape and then I can measure it. It worked out that the outside walls would need to be 20 inches by 24 inches. So that's the size that I need to cut my cardboard box to get my walls. So for my garden walls, I want them to completely surround the outside of the garden, and the front section will be removable so that you can see inside it once it's all complete. And I'm using an old cardboard box to make the walls. I've measured 4 pieces at 20 inches in length by 7 inches high, and another 4 pieces at 24 inches in length and 7 inches high. I also measured quite a lot of strips of card that are 1 inch thick, and these are going to go around the outside of the walls, and I'm also going to put some in the center to just make sure that the walls are a bit more stable, and when I press on them later on using some tin foil, that they don't fall apart and bend. So I'm just going to continue to glue all my walls together. 3 are just going to be plain brick, and then the last wall will have an archway in. And yeah, we'll get into the next section. So for the last wall, I need to put the archway in. I've used a piece of card that I folded in half and cut to the size that I want. And I'm just placing this where I want the arch to be and tracing around it. I'll cut this out, and then I'll line up the piece of card with the other piece of card and cut that out again so that when we glue them together, they will align and we'll have an archway. So here are the walls made. When I first started this, I made the front one a lot smaller. I don't know why I thought it would look okay, but in the end I decided I didn't like it. So a little bit later on, I decided to make another section that's the same height as the other 3 that are already in place. And yeah, I just wanted to explain why the front one at the moment is a lot smaller and then later on it's a lot larger. It's because I changed my mind and I liked it with them all being the same size. So for my bricks, I am using polystyrene cups. I'm just going to cut this cup up so that I've got a flat sheet to measure out my bricks. For my brick size, I'm doing 0.5 millimeters high by 1 inch in length. I did have a look on the internet for 1/12 scale brick size, and because bricks are not a uniform size, there was a lot of different sizes depending on what site I was looking at. So in the end, I picked 0.5 millimeters by 1 inch, and yeah, they are about the size that I wanted. I didn't want them too small and I didn't want them too large, so I'm happy with the size that I picked. And now I'm just going to measure out on my cup the size that I need, and then I can cut them all out. So now I can start to add the bricks. I've measured 1 inch from the end of this piece of wall, and this is because this is going to be the piece that I remove, and I'm going to have Velcro on the section where it's not going to have bricks. And I'm just using PVA glue to glue the bricks in place, and I'm just leaving a small gap in between each of the bricks so that you'll be able to see the mortar once it's painted. I'm going to do the inside of 3 of the pieces of wall, and then I'll be back to do the one with the archway. So for the archway, I'm going to do around the top first and then the sides, and then I'll add the rest of the bricks just as normal as I've done the other 3 pieces. So now all the bricks are glued on the inside of the walls. I'm using a screwed up piece of tin foil that I'm pressing into the bricks to create texture so that it gives a little bit more detail to the bricks. And I'm going to do this on all the brickwork, and then we can start to paint. So originally I wanted like a sandy colour for the mortar, and I mixed so many different paints and I couldn't get it the colour that I wanted. So I painted it all in this colour first, and when it dried I really didn't like it. So then I went over it again in grey. So when we get to the next part of the video, you'll understand why it's a completely different colour to what I'm painting here. Once the base coat is painted and it's in the colour that I was happy with, I'm then using a mixture of reds. I've got crimson that I mixed with a bit of black to make it darker. I've got crimson on its own. I've got a bright red, an orange and a yellowish colour as well. I'm going to be using sponges to paint the bricks, and I'm just going to dab a bit of colour on that I want. Use an old magazine to take off the excess paint so that once I press this onto the bricks, it doesn't go into the gaps of the bricks, and it will leave the grey mortar showing as well. And I'm just going to do this by adding a mixture of the paints. Bricks aren't one solid colour, so I want them to be different colours, and I'm just going to do this until I've completely covered all 4 pieces that I've put the bricks on and let them dry. And here they are all dry. I'm really happy with how they turned out, except from this one, I need to make it a little bit lighter. It's a little bit too dark compared to the other three, but I'm really happy with how they've turned out. And now I can start to add the bricks to the other pieces or the other sides. I'm only going to add the bricks to the front and back one for now because I want to glue the walls in place before I add the bricks on the side so I can go over the joins. So I'm just going to do these two pieces again exactly the same way that I did the other side, and I'll be back. So now the bricks are on the front and back piece, I can start to glue these together and then I can add the rest of the bricks. I'm just going to use hot glue to glue them in place and then continue to work on the brickwork. So I've glued all the bricks in place now, and I'm going to add my front section to the rest of the walls, and I'm using self-adhesive Velcro, and this is from Poundland, and I had a feeling that this wasn't going to work, and yeah, it doesn't. As soon as you try and pull the wall from the rest of the walls, the self-adhesive Velcro just comes apart, it falls off. So I'm going to have to try and figure another way of putting this in place and it's still being able to be removed, but I've just added a bit to each of the corners and I'm just going to pop that in place for now. And the reason I'm putting this in place now is I want to do this before I paint the outside of the walls, but I'm going to put this in place and then I'm going to work on the top of the walls and then we can finish it off. So for the top of the wall, I want it to have a slight curve and I'm going to measure some pieces. The pieces are 1¼ inch by 1½ inch, and I'm going to use the tin foil and do the detail on the polystyrene before I glue them in place, just because they are going to be slightly curved. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on them because I think they'll just break. So I'm going to do all that before I glue them in place. So I'm going to cut as many as I need to cover the whole of the top of the walls, and I'll be back. Now that the tiles are all cut and they've got the detail put on them with the tin foil, I'm going to use my glue gun and glue these in place. I'm going to start by just gluing one side in place, letting it dry, and then slightly curving and bending it and gluing the other section down. I'm then also going to add some polystyrene balls to each of the corners, and I'm going to work my way around the whole top until all the walls are completely covered. So once everything was glued in place, I did a quick coat of grey around the top and the outside, and now I can paint the outside exactly the same as I painted it in the inside. I'm using the same colours, I'm using sponges, exactly the same technique. I'm going to do that and let it dry, and then we're done. I'm not going to add the moss and the flock and all the plants and all the details that I want to add. I'm going to do that the next time that I work on it, but I'll show you what it looks like. So here it is finished. It's a lot later in the day. I've not been able to film because it's really dark outside and it's raining and there's no natural light. So I had to try and get some pictures the best that I could. It's still showing really brown on the pictures when actually it's more red. It's more like the colours you could see throughout the video. But I just wanted to show you what it looks like completed. I've still got wash to add. I've still got moss and flock and bushes and climbing plants and hanging baskets to add to the the outside of the wall and on the inside of the wall. So that will be my next video when I work on this. I'm going to do some other things before I start to work on this again, but this is the completed piece. It's 20 inches by 24 inches in length. It's really big and I'm really chuffed with how it turned out. The first time I've ever made walls, and yeah, I'm really happy with the results. So I hope it's given you some ideas. Take care for now, and I will see you on Friday. Bye.